Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the August 22nd, 2024 Zoning Board of Appeals hearing. We have two items on the agenda. I'm gonna take some things out of order. Item number 2, 112 Arlington Avenue, which is appeal number ZB 0007-24, Suffolk County Tax Map number 206-0011-002-0027. Property owner is Joseph Davi. The applicant is Brookhaven Expedited care of our Andrew Malguanera. We have a correspondence asking for that hearing to be postponed. I'll make a motion that we postpone that hearing to the next available board meeting for September. Cindy? Yes, no, am I right in saying that?
The public hearing was closed in July, so tonight it was on for decision.
Oh, okay. So,
So
we're
they
gonna.
asked that they postpone the deliberation on the decision until they can pass it.
Okay, so we're still within the 62-day
Yes.
window. Okay.
So the next meeting is September 19th, they'll be on that agenda.
Okay, so, we will not be hearing that or discussing that application tonight, so if you're here for that, we will not be discussing it. The second application on the agenda, and before I begin, Alexia Pujols, did I say Alexia?
Pulos.
Pulos, is now a full member of the zoning board and will be sitting in tonight, in replacement of Andrew Thomas. Tonight's hearing, 6:30 PM public hearing, is for 115 Arlington, appeal number ZB-0006-24, Suffolk County Tax Map number 206-0011-002-006, zoning RB-2 residential district. Property owner is Michael Colucci, applicant is Michael Colucci, contact is Michael Colucci. Description: existing covered patio requires a variance. Action: public hearing adjourned from 7:25. Pursuant to the Village Code, Section 250-28, Section C, subsection 4, the applicant requests a variance for an active existing accessory building built 7½ feet from the rear property line where 10 feet is required. Okay, is the applicant present? Mr. Colucci, if you'd come forward and just get sworn in by Jennifer. Okay, just a couple of housekeeping issues. I was not present for the last hearing, but I did reach out to counsel, and he confirmed that as long as I watch the YouTube video and I am up to date on the current facts of the case, which I state for the record I am, I can sit in on this hearing.
I am the same.
Okay, so everyone is up to date, so we can discuss this. Mr. Colucci, did you receive a copy of the staff's report?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I'm gonna make a motion that, I need to make a motion to reopen this hearing, because we adjourned it from the last time. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. I'm sorry, Mr. Colucci. For the record, did you receive a copy of the staff report for 115 Arlington Avenue?
Yes.
Thank you. All right. So we have a couple of clarifications from the last meeting. So Mr. Colucci, just bear with me. The issue here that we all seem to be struggling with is active versus passive. After conversations with counsel and in-house staff, we've determined that it's not the duty of this board to interpret what active versus passive, which would then be either overriding or confirming the building inspector's decision, which is not our function. Our only function here is to determine whether we're going to grant a variance for 2½ feet. So I just want to make that clear for the record. Does anybody on the board have any questions for Mr. Colucci? Do you have any questions? No? Mr. Calucci, I'm just gonna ask you a couple of questions. Deidre, can you post up on the board, on the screen, the pictures of the structure? All right, Mr. Calucci, just for the record, that window there, can you confirm whether that opens or is a fixed window?
Well, right now in that picture, it's before the window is installed, but the window that is in that place does open, yes.
Okay, and it's a tilt-out, it's a full tilt-out
It's an
window?
awning-style window, yes.
Awning-style window, okay. And the only electric you have in this structure is the porch light and I believe it's 2 receptacles?
So there are 3 total sconces exterior. The one is pictured in here, and there are 2 on the front face of the garage. You can see half of one there, yeah, and then one on the other side. There are 2 outlets underneath that overhang wall, and then there's another exterior outlet around the corner by that wood fence.
Okay.
There's additionally a couple of outlets inside.
Okay. But for clarification, as it relates to this overhang, you just have the 1 porch light and the 2 receptacles in there?
Yes.
Okay. And your intention, what is your intention for, I know you answered this last time, but just for myself and for Alexia, what is your intention for the flooring? Are you gonna leave it that way? Are you gonna asphalt, stone?
So we may put in patio pavers or something similar.
Okay, so it's your intention to finish that floor?
Right. It would intend to use the space as, I guess, a porch or
Okay.
similar overhang pergola type
Excellent.
use.
At the last hearing, your neighbor, Mr. Gang, showed up at the hearing, had a couple of questions or concerns, one of them being about the landscaping behind the structure.
Okay.
Have you installed the landscape? Excuse me.
So I believe the landscaping in question would be the blue spruce and the Leland cypress that are depicted on the left there in the photo.
Okay. So the landscaping agreed upon has been returned, because I guess at the last meeting, he stated that to build this, you removed some screening.
Right. So the garage was rebuilt due to a fire that I had 2 years ago. So during the fire and during the process of putting that out, there was a lot of the existing landscaping damaged. There was a tree there that had to be removed because it was dying, and other flowers and shrubs. There was no agreed upon landscaping per se. This was just something we installed after the garage was put in for privacy. The same intention as the rear wall on the structure is again installed for privacy. So it's just an additional privacy measure.
Okay. So there is some type of screen, other than the wall, as far as past the wall, there is the blue spruce and that
The cypress, yes.
cypress, yes.
Yes, those 2 trees on the left of the photo.
Okay.
Yes.
Excellent. All right.
Is there any plantings behind that wall in the garage or just to the side?
There's no plantings behind the garage now. There's not really adequate room to put anything.
Okay.
Additionally, I wanted to keep some area around it for ventilation, for keeping it dry and accessible. Right, there's a photo.
Mr. Calucci, just for the record, is there any under soffit or soffit lighting in this structure right now?
There is not.
Okay. Is it your intention to add soffit lighting at a later date?
We had discussed possibly adding under soffit lighting for the overhang, though there currently isn't any.
Okay. Dan, do you have any questions for the applicant?
None.
All right. All right, Mr. Calucci, I'm just going to walk you through some criteria. All I'm asking you is to answer it the best of your ability. One of the criteria is whether an undesirable change would be produced in the character of the neighborhood if we granted this variance. Do you think if we granted this variance prior to you building the structure, was there any adverse impact on your community or any other neighborhoods?
So, no. As stated in the assessment given to the board, I would say that there is no adverse effect. The style of the structure is keeping with the style of many others in the Port Jefferson area. In fact, many neighbors have made a point when they were walking by to comment on how much they thought it looked nice. Additionally, the location is positioned similarly to other active use structures in the area, and the difference in variance granted versus rejected would only be a difference by a roof line and corresponding wall of 3 feet.
Okay. Deidre, could you put up the aerial of the neighborhood for this?
Additionally, I do have a couple of aerial shots that are more recent than the ones depicted there, if you'd like to see.
Yes, please.
Thank you. Great. Thank you very much.
Cindy, for the record, we're going to make this an exhibit in the file, the next corresponding letter.
So the blue line on that picture is my best depiction of the property line that I have. The yellow picture circled there depicts the overhang in question, the setback of 7 feet.
Okay.
And there are similar structures that are positioned less than 10 feet that are active use in the area that I have circled in red. Again, to represent precedent in the neighborhood.
Just bear with us a moment.
Sure.
So, Mr. Colucci, it looks like from the aerial you gave me, and I'm just looking at the one you gave me and assuming, if you go towards the top of the page where you have 10-foot setback, that's another structure that appears to be close to the property line. I want to ask you to indicate what you think it is, but you'd say that's close or similar to your situation as far as being close to the property line?
Right.
Your garage.
My understanding of that structure, though I won't speak for that neighbor, is that it's a pool house, so an active use structure. There's French doors off the side.
Yep.
I put under 10 feet on the setback there because I can't verify the actual distance, although I would tell you it's definitely less than 10 feet.
Okay. So, all right, so we have another active use structure within reasonable amount.
Right, and the other structure that's in, I'll say the directly to the left of the one proposed here is also an active use. It has a screened-in living space attached to a garage that is routinely used actively for dining, and additionally there's a phone and other amenities.
And for the record, that's Mr. Gang's property?
Yes.
Okay.
Is that the same property with the pool house, or is that a separate property?
That is a separate property.
Separate property, okay.
Right.
The
His house is right there.
Right, and that's the property line right there.
I would assume
Yeah.
that's the property line, yes.
He clearly stated that it is a screened porch that is
Yes.
there in the last meeting.
Correct.
And we're assuming that this is the property line for
Yep.
this property
Yep.
somewhere in there. Okay.
I do additionally have photos of those other active use structures if you'd like to see them.
Yes, please. Take your time.
Thank you.
And Mr. Colucci, I'm just going to ask you as we go along, just to, what is the first picture that's in the packet? What is this? Is it a pool house, a garage? What, to the
Right,
best of
so-
your knowledge?
Sure. Those first two photos, the green building is the screened-in porch area. Again, Gerard's screened-in garage/living space. The best I could take, because it's 2 feet from the property line, I couldn't really get a far-away shot of it. The next...
Mr.
Yep,
Colucci, just
sure.
to verify, this is the backside of the structure you just rebuilt?
Right, that is the back of the garage portion of the structure.
And you're just, I know, the furthest point in the picture of your structure, is that your portico or
Can I just
overhang? Where would that overhang be? Is the overhang here or is
So
it?
it's kind of around the
Oh,
corner.
okay. All right.
This is the back wall of the garage itself.
Okay,
Mhm.
right, and then the step-in is over there, okay. So just for the record, the picture here that's shown in, provided by Mr. Colucci is just the rear of his garage. It does not show the offset wall that's in question for this application.
Right. For reference of the distinction between those, the report issue does have kind of a side view, so you might be able to understand that
Okay.
orientation better.
Mr. Colucci, tell me about picture number 2 here. Number 2 that you have here, I gotta walk through for the, so the picture that number 2 represents.
Right,
is
that's the
this-
same structure, it's just a closer-up image of the screened-in portion of the building.
And this is your neighbor immediately behind you?
Yes.
Correct, to the rear of your property.
Right, and that one is positioned 2 feet from the property line.
Okay. Just gonna ask for the question, you keep saying 2 feet from the property line. Is that from a survey, or is that your?
That is
Yes.
a measured number from where the survey depicts the property line that I have measured.
Okay, thank you. The third picture here represents, what is that?
So the third picture there represents the, if you look at the aerial shot again, the mostly covered by trees, but the structure that is on the bottom of the page where it says 2-foot setback additionally, near the pool. It's mostly obscured.
Down below.
Yeah, it's probably right here, it's probably down in here somewhere. So, Mr. Colucci, it's somewhere in this area down?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Right, I apologize, the printer quality is not great
Nope,
when you blow it up.
More than adequate, thank you. And the fourth picture in your structure here?
There's another view of the same
Okay,
use,
great.
which is I would describe as pool house additionally. There is a half bathroom in that structure, and it does have what appears to be a bar.
Okay.
They're classifying it as active use.
Yes.
Therefore classifying it also as active use building.
Correct. All the ones that I've highlighted, I would interpret as active use, like you said.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Excellent. The second question that's required is whether this benefit could feasibly been achieved without invariance. I'll help you with that. We theoretically could have if you would have built the wall 2.5 feet forward, but because of circumstances, you built it where it was, interpretation from the building inspector, and then some change in circumstance.
Right, so when I submitted the permit as it was approved, we had discussed a 5-foot setback, which is why we decided to push it back to 7 to give us some cushion. It was after the fact that it was reclassified, or some discrepancy arose, where they had decided it would now be 10 foot. There's no alternative way for me to get the CO closed, because the building's already constructed, and I was informed that the only way for the CO to be issued at this point would be with the granting of a variance.
Okay. And just for clarification, when you originally built this, or was in the process of getting a permit, it was represented as possible passive use, and then as you built it, circumstances changed.
The discussion of active versus passive never came up.
Okay.
There was never any real description of intended use of the structure, so none was given.
Okay. Whether the requested area variance is substantial, for the record, it would be considered 25%. So,
Right.
this board has approved things less than 25%, but it is 25.
I
Whether,
would-
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I would say, as stated by the assessment as well, it does not constitute to me a substantial change. The addition would have, is not a substantial deviation from the requirements because it's only 3 feet. If the structure was classified as passive, it would be compliant already without variance. So to me, it would already be in the realm of being compliant.
Whether you're gonna have any adverse physical or environmental conditions in neighborhood, you're not gonna put excessive lighting or any more lighting than that's there now. You're not storing any chemicals or any equipment or anything that's, would have an impact on the neighborhood.
So again, I agree with the assessment. The addition would not have any adverse effects on any environmental conditions.
And whether the alleged difficulty was self-created, I think we could, depending on how you look at it, it could go both ways. Yes, it is self-created by the change of use of the space, not the property. But again, your intention, as you stated, was that when you originally issued it, you had dealt with the building inspector, you thought you were in compliance, and then this came up at a later point of construction. Is that correct?
Right, so I would say that, no, the structure is not self-created, due to the fact that the structure was built complying with the requirements of the building permit. The structure built is in compliance with the original requirements I was given, but does not satisfy a 10-foot setback now. If I was given a 10-foot setback before the permit was approved, I may have chosen to build the structure in a different style and therefore avoid the need for a variance.
Okay. Mr. Calucci, just a couple of things I'd like to bring to your attention that this board may or may not do. One of them would be putting conditions on this variance. One of the conditions possibly could be no additional utilities, i.e. under soffit lighting, a fan, additional electric. Plumbing is not allowed by code, so no plumbing. And the second being not enclosing the remaining two sides. If the board was to consider that, would you have an issue, or would you have any concerns about that?
So in the report, I guess I'd refer to the first condition would be not to enclose the space. That seems very reasonable to me. It was never my intention to create a room outside. It was only to be, a covered area that would obviously be an addition of sorts. That's not something that I'd be worried about. The second point, however, about lighting and electrical, electrical code currently requires a light by the garage door as it's installed.
Right.
And passive use structures, to my understanding, can have electric, but this one cannot for some reason.
No, we're not opposed to the electric that you have now.
Right.
Where we would put a condition that you don't add any additional. So in other words, you have a porch light and you have two receptacles in the space that we're talking about.
Right.
We would ask that you don't add any additional lighting, for example, under soffit lighting, a ceiling fan, any type of, anything, anything electrical, adding another 10, putting, a power awning, or any type of other electric in there, or equipment that would require electric. For example, a bar. I'm just not saying that that's your intention. I'm just putting a bar in there or anything like that.
Can I just understand why that requirement is being proposed, considering that active use structures can traditionally have electrical, and as far as I know, even a powder room is acceptable?
Well, I'm not saying that we are putting that condition on there. We're just saying that the board may consider that. From my point of view, and just speaking for myself and not for the other members of the board, you have a neighbor that's come out that has a concern. He obviously has a concern, number one, that you built the wall there for one reason or another. And our intention would not to be to impact his, again, say you put 30 lights, 30 soffit lights, because you're gonna put a baseball stadium, right, or you're gonna play cornhole, or you're gonna put, is not to impact his quality of life. And again, we have not agreed to anything yet. This is just something that I'm bringing to your attention. You are correct, by code, he is allowed to have electric. You are allowed to have electric. Our only concern is that, well, we don't want you to, again, maybe you put lights on the spotlights on the side, for example. Say you put a recreation area next to it, which you'd be entitled to, and you decide you're gonna light it up. It would be, things like that affecting him.
Right, but it's my understanding that the village code already has requirements for lighting and similar things that would have to be adhered to regardless. So if there was anything that would be a bother to him, it would have to comply to the current codes regardless of this stipulation. As well, I'm not really sure why him being uncomfortable would cause me to lose some ability to...
I'm not saying, I just don't want to...
Right, I'm not saying you are. I'm just saying that hypothetically...
And we could reword the condition that prior to any additional lighting being introduced, you would have to contact the building department for approval. You'd need that, in some cases you would need that we can go down that road. I'm just putting it out there, making you aware, it may be something.
Right, I would just find it troubling that I would have the stipulation that I can't add any additional electrical receptacles or lighting, especially for the fact that if this covered area was to be used at night, it could be a safety hazard. I mean, I get home after 6 o'clock most days from work, and if I wanted to use it any time past October, it's going to be well dark by then, and I would therefore not be able to use it for the entire season. So,
Your concerns will be noted and will be taken under advisement by the board.
Again, one point of clarification, hypothetically, any additional lighting or electric would be on the side of the wall not facing the neighbor,
Right.
correct? Like, the wall would be a barrier between whatever you put in
right,
and
the
your
wall would
neighbors.
be both a sound and visual barrier, so any lighting that we would put in would not be on the, I'll say, neighbor-facing wall. There'd be
Correct.
no
Like
rationale for putting
noise or
anything
light
over there.
pollution, that would,
Right, in this case, the wall would actually be a benefit because it would block out anything that we
Right.
decided to do,
okay, thanks.
as it was intended to be used for.
The board will take your concerns into consideration.
Mm-hmm.
Does anyone else have any questions for Mr. Calucci?
No, none.
Okay. Mr. Calucci, do you have any further questions or comments for the board?
I think that should sum up what I had wanted to talk about. I will say additionally, I do have an estimate for what it would cost had the variance not been approved, for what the alteration to bring it to compliance would be. The number ran $9,800, so declining the variance would be at an enormous detriment to my usage, as well as a very large financial burden that I don't feel that I put on myself.
Mhm.
So,
Okay. Again, any questions or comments? No? Just for the record, is there anyone in the public that would like to speak on this application? Please come forward, sir. I just need you, before you speak, to be sworn in.
I do. Christian Patrizio. P-A-T-R-I-Z-I-O. Am I good?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
thank you.
absolutely. Go ahead.
Sorry. My name is Christian Patrizio. I also lived at 115 Arlington with Mike.
You live or
I
live?
live, sorry.
Live, okay, I just want to.
Nervous.
No, really, take a moment, we're not.
Thank you. I had a whole speech prepared. I had wanted to clarify some of the timeline. It seems to me that you guys understand the situation here. It was never our intention to burden our neighbor. As such, that wall was installed as a privacy screen because we know that he has a structure that he actively uses behind us that's screened in. So we wanted to give him and us some sound and visual barrier. That's the same reason that we put those shrubs back in place, so that way we could have a separation of yards. And had we known from the get-go that there was an issue, we would have been more than happy to try to come to a compromise. It wasn't until after the structure was erected that we actually found out who had made a complaint. And at that point, what was done was done. It would be, like Mike said, a tremendous financial burden for us to have to move that. And I'd really like to reiterate that in the off-season, it would be so dark if we couldn't install any more overhead lighting. That sconce in the corner, you can't see, the picture was taken in the daytime, is fairly dim. It goes vertically up and down. There's an 18-foot span of that overhang. The back corner of that, especially now with the no patio in place yet, is a tripping hazard and just, it could be a danger to us if we wanted to go out there and use the space in the meantime.
Okay,
But that really sums up what I wanted to say.
all right, excellent, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak on this application? Mr. Coolidge, could I just ask you to come back up? I just want to, going back on, after just considering what you said regarding the lighting and what,
Christian, yes.
Christian, I apologize. A condition could possibly be is, not that you would, but that you do not put any lighting on the back of the structure.
Right.
So, we may consider that as a possibility. Again, this is not, we haven't made a decision yet, so,
Right, we have no intention
brought
of
some
putting
good
any
points up.
spotlights into Gerard's yard, if that's the concern.
well, believe it or not, people have
I-
done that.
I believe you.
So we're trying to learn from past mistakes here, but, so that may be, I think that, after rethinking, I think that was the consideration about the additional electric was
I
not
understand.
putting lights or, putting globe lights that are gonna spray light in various directions.
Right,
so.
there again, I'll point out that the wall would block 99% of that light if
Right.
it's on the other side, as well as the fact that there are current codes that would prevent such things. You wouldn't be allowed, as my understanding of, briefly skimming through the code, that you can't put a spotlight off the back of your house into a neighbor's property as it is. So that would, I would assume any concerns about this would already be covered by that, and that would just be a little bit redundant. But yeah, we have no intention of putting lighting on the back of the garage. There's no need.
Excellent, thank you. One last time, is there any questions or comments from Mr. Calucci?
I do have one additional question. Is it worth entering in the estimate for the alteration of the garage as an exhibit?
We could take a copy of that, sure.
I have a copy with me if you'd like.
Yeah, if I
Thank you.
could take a copy of it, and I'm gonna, no, it's fine, well, we can make you a copy and get you back. Oh, okay, so, no, it's fine, one copy's fine. Cindy will make that the next exhibit in the file.
Okay.
So we're gonna have 3 exhibits for the file. Cindy, we're going to have, the first one, which is the aerial and, the pictures of before and after of the structure. The second set of pictures is structures, adjacent to the property or in close proximity to the property of other active structures. And the third one being the estimate that he just submitted to me, which I'll give to you at the close of the hearing. And for the record, as Mr. Calucci stated, the estimate from JMG Home Improvements was $9,800 to relocate the wall an additional 2.5 feet to the east, I believe? North. Okay.
Either way.
To the forward of the property. How about that?
Sure.
To the forward
Away
of the
from the
property.
property line.
That being said, I'm gonna make one last anybody else have any other questions? One last time? All right, any other questions or comments from the public? That being said, I'm gonna make a motion that we close the hearing. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for coming out. Mr. Calucci, you're welcome to stay. We're gonna deliberate right down there. You're welcome to stay and listen. I would say thank you for all coming up, but you all came out for the same hearing, so.
Thank you, everybody. There we go, it's green.
All right, there we go.
Green is good.
Green is good. All right, so, couple of clarification. I'm a little confused at the hearing, just that he submitted the application, and I don't know if the person that approved the application, I don't know if it was Jim or Mark, just assumed it was gonna be passive, and then he said, I'm gonna sit underneath it, which then gives you
Yeah.
Jim's mind, it's gonna be active.
Yeah.
Either way, I think at least the intent was, and they moved it up 2.5 feet, because 5 would've been if they were passive, they require 5, they went
Mhm.
7.5, thinking they were covering themselves. So, I think, at least their intent was to, obviously do the right thing.
Yeah. but
And they
I
tried
think-
to rectify when the classification changed.
Yes.
They did what they could to.
Yeah. Cindy, just for the record, this is a secret type 2 action, as per the report. One thing I'd like to say, 2 things actually. One thing is, in the staff's report, they say that the difficulty was self-created. I kind of don't know that I believe that, because they got a permit, they received a permit. They didn't
Exactly.
build, it wasn't like the structure was built and they was trying to get a CO.
Correct.
So I don't know that it was
Like the-
self-created, but is it a misunderstanding?
Yeah.
I don't know, so.
Yeah, I think it's debatable at best that it was self-created.
you know,
I think
the-
there was a change in classification by the granting
But-
parties.
yes.
Therefore, it was not necessarily
Right.
self-created in that regard, with the
Mhm.
Right.
exception of their choice of design. So I agree with you completely on that.
Andy, can you give us a little insight? And I know I'm not gonna ask you to speak for the building inspector, I'm just gonna, the process, how did we, I guess, kinda get here and avoid this happening again, I guess, is that, because he did submit a building permit, he did get a building permit, the portico was on the building permit. He maintained the 5 feet by insetting the roof line, and then the classification changed. Did the building inspector just automatically assume it was gonna be passive, and then Mr. Colucci said, I'm gonna sit and smoke cigars there, and then Jim confirmed it? I mean,
Mike?
and Deirdre, you can.
I talked to
jump-
Jim about this.
Oh, okay, all right, so you did have the conversation.
So when I asked him about what the process was. Okay, when I asked him what the process was, he assumed it was passive because it was just gonna be an extension from a passive garage. He thought maybe they just put garbage cans or something under there. It was an extension of a passive use. But then in speaking to them, from his understanding, then they mentioned that they wanted to occupy the space. So then that's where it came up like, oh wait, we needed to be
Right.
10 feet. So
So-
he made the assumption that
Okay.
it was passive originally because it was an extension of a passive use.
But isn't a garage automatically inactive, isn't it garage?
Garage is passive.
Garage
Passive.
Passive.
Oh, right, that's right, it's only
Yep.
pool houses and stuff like that.
Right.
Right, like tool sheds,
Yeah.
greenhouses.
So like a shed is a passive, I guess a shed would be technically a passive use, right?
Yeah, sheds are passive
Storage
as a
shed,
storage.
storage
yes.
shed, right,
yeah,
garden shed,
yeah,
right.
yeah.
Cause we were just talking about you saying that you thought it was self-created.
That's,
Give me 1 second, Mr. Wood. I kinda think
That's
it's a
where the
gray.
miscommunication
Yeah, it's a,
is, yes.
I think it's a gray line, just in the fact that by submitting a building permit, and approving it,
right, it's just we don't ask every single person that
Right,
submits a
right,
building permit,
so-
what are you doing with this?
so it was-
that's where
right, it
the
was just a
assumption came from.
miscommunicate,
But that is an important question,
I think
Yeah.
that should go in
Yeah.
for, yeah.
because it
Yeah.
will determine the
Well, so
necessary
that's
setbacks.
the thing, if you're saying on the permit, roof over addition to garage,
Yeah.
that doesn't say what it is, but see, people will put like patio space to garage, then that kind of changes the wording, and then you're like, oh, okay, well patio, there's some assumptions with
Yeah.
wording, and I
like
think
you
that's
said patio,
where.
I think I would say then it's active, cause you're gonna put chairs
Yep.
and stuff like that.
Right.
Right,
Where it's
so
like
I-
a garage overhang, you might not necessarily.
Right, so I think
Right.
that that's where his assumption might have come
Mhm.
from, and then it's just down the line, it was a realization, oh, okay, this is gonna be occupied, that changes things a bit, and that's
Yeah.
where, from
Yeah.
from my discussion with him.
Yes, certainly.
Mr. Clichy, we can't ask you any questions, so you can say what you want, but we can't ask you any questions.
That's fair, okay, I wasn't sure if I was allowed to get
Okay.
some clarification. So I just wanted to speak to that, the order of events there of, with Jim active, passive, classification. So, we never spoke about any active versus passive, things before the permit was approved, or really a while after. It wasn't until we started actually building that I believe the issue grows. I suspect, I can't confirm, that the issue was brought up because of an unhappy neighbor, that there was some sort of discussion with other building inspectors, and after I was told about the 10-foot requirement, I had called Jim, we had talked about it, and he told me that the 5 was still okay. It wasn't until I asked that in writing that I got a phone call shortly after from Mark Vasakis, I believe his name,
Building inspector.
telling me that it actually needs to be 10 foot, and there was some disagreement there, and Mark, I believe, is the senior building inspector,
Yes.
so he had the final say on that. So I don't think it was actually because of any conversation I had with Jim. I think there was a discrepancy between what internal to the department on the classification in the first place. So just wanted to make note of that. Again, thanks.
Thank you, sir. I'm looking at the survey that was provided by, it's part of the building building permit file. It does say proposed 6 by 24 overhang roof. If it would've said overhang patio, you know, so, I think it's a gray area.
It is.
Could have been classified because there's a door on that side, so that bit of an overhang as far as protection, and it wasn't until later description as far as the
Well,
intended use.
if that was
so-
if that was your only door, you could say, well, like, you know, I put an overhang there because I didn't want to get wet, you know,
Yeah.
if I would've just if I would've just done a reverse gable off of there, you know.
Right, but we had the word assume come into play.
Yes,
So
yes.
when building inspectors had made that assumption, it possibly was due to that, and it wasn't till later communication and clarification that it became an active use.
Yeah. I mean, without getting inside people's heads and
Yeah, I'm not-
everything, what is clear is that there was a misunderstanding.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. My point being is I don't wholeheartedly, with all due respect to
Mhm.
staff,
Yeah.
I don't necessarily wholeheartedly agree that it was intentionally self-created. Like, we've been plenty of people, you know, how many times we've seen this board is where it's like,
Someone builds a pool and then comes to you after the fact.
right,
Say.
right. He got to build. He followed the process.
Right. Yeah.
Followed the process. So
Right.
I think
Yeah.
if they would originally said classified as something else and it changed the classification, but I think their intent was always to use it for what they did. And
Yes.
we can go down the rabbit hole of active versus passive, but
Yeah.
We're not,
beat that horse to death. So.
Right. Yep.
it is active and therefore,
Yep. So that's really the building inspector classified as active. So.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Anybody have any questions or comments on this? I do feel that we should make a condition that the remaining 2 walls are never not allowed to be added,
Yep.
and that other than lighting that's blocked, lighting that's underneath and that's obscured by the rear wall from the back neighbor is the only lighting. There's no spotlights,
Yeah.
no no lights added to the rear of the structure.
Correct. Yeah.
visual pollution to neighboring parcels.
Yes.
I mean, it's pretty clear that it's not necessarily going to cause an adverse impact to the neighborhood, given the fact that you have
Right.
at least 2.
Four.
Yeah, at least,
Right.
several active use structures with similar or less setbacks than
Right.
the one here.
The only concern, like I said, I brought it up was them throwing spotlights on there if they decide
Sure.
to put a cornhole board or do
Right.
something more. They're build a
Yeah.
fire pit or something there. But again, as you stated, there's codes against that as well.
Right.
But any other questions or comments?
No?
You look like you have something to say, Alexa.
No,
You sure?
yeah,
Okay.
I'm just looking at the surrounding properties and
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think he's got enough of an argument to say that there's similar active structures in the immediate area.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think it's, and, we don't know the answer to the question of do any of these have COs, and I'm not gonna play, again,
Right.
we're not the CO police,
Right.
so. That being said, I'm gonna make a motion that we approve sure I get this right. 'Cause I always mess this up. And I get. Make a motion that we approve the applicant's request for a variance for an active accessory structure built 7.5 feet from the rear property line where 10 feet is required, being a 2.5 foot request.
Yep.
With the conditions that the remaining 2 walls are never added, or the structure is not enclosed,
Never enclosed, yeah.
and that no lighting is put on the rear of the structure at all.
Correct.
They can add lighting in accordance with the village code in the overhang, but nothing on the rear of the property.
Correct. Yeah.
That being said, I make that motion. Do I have a second on that, or do I have any question or a comment on that?
No question or comment?
Okay,
Second, oh, go ahead.
No, please. Go for it.
Second?
second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Okay.
Congratulations. I'm sorry it took so long.
Thank you so much. You don't know the weight that has been lifted off us right now. So.
Good job on your due diligence.
Thank you. Thank you. You guys have a great rest of your night.
Enjoy your summer.
I hope that you guys get your building department back soon.
My question was what the next step was, but I think that kind of answered all of it. As far as going forward.
So, yeah, so we'll make a decision, in fact, you know, after the chairman file the building inspector.
Typically don't. No.